One second. Now it's coming through.
Now it's fine.
Wonderful. Great. So Howard, talk about being a one of a kind of musician. I mean, there's really like, you're all alone. Like, we always feel like in our band, like not a lot of people are doing what we're doing, but like you've always been like your own thing. And I think a lot of us are really curious about like your history, your musical beginnings, your career path. So like when did it all start for you?
Well, I started playing piano when I was about 8.5 years old. I had really wanted my parents to, excuse me, I just ate some lunch. I really wanted piano lessons since I was probably 5, and my parents went, "You're too young, you're too young, you're too young." Finally, I really want to play the piano. And so after 3 piano lessons, I started improvising.
Mm.
And I'm not conscious of how this really started. All I know is that as soon as the teacher showed me how to play with both hands at the same time, I just started playing my stuff, And my mom in the room and said, "Oh, what are you playing, Howard?" I went, "No, I'm just playing my music, And so, and it sounded good because it was kind of like, I would hear stuff and play things that sounded like what I heard, whatever kind of music it was that I liked, and it had, harmony in it and melodies that were coherent, and so it's just.
You're just finding good things, just looking for good stuff.
Right away started playing stuff that sounded like music,
Yeah.
So the teacher very soon said, "Look, your son really needs to be in a different kind of environment, not just me coming here once a week." And so they suggested that I go to a music school. And it was growing up in New York, there were 2. There was Juilliard and Manhattan. And my parents decided on Manhattan because it was a little more humane. And so I had to audition, and I got in. And I got some real discipline, and I had a teacher who was very demanding about piano technique. But they all understood I liked to improvise, and also I studied theory. So I went there on Saturdays, had a lesson for an hour and a theory class for an hour. And then when we finished playing a piece well enough for the teacher to approve of it, we would play it at a thing called music hour, which was, a little kind of an informal concert in front of all the kids and some of the parents. And so I got used to playing for people and having my playing being critically evaluated, but in a nice way. From age 9 to 12, I did this on Saturday afternoons. And so it provided me with structure and discipline, and they taught me enough theory so that I, understood what things are called. But I kept improvising, and pretty much everything else after that. I did study the pipe organ for about 1.5 years. I went to a private high school that had an organ. And we actually had to sing Protestant hymns 3 times a week at chapel.
That's like the price. That's the price you pay.
That's right. But I heard this pipe organ. I had never heard anything or seen anything like this. It's like,
massive,
wow,
right?
What an amazing sound. Could I learn how to play this? And the guy who was the organist at the school was really good, and he did give people lessons on the organ if you were good enough. And so I learned how to play a bunch of Bach, the Toccata and Fugue in D minor, the Passacaglia in C minor, a whole bunch of other, the little G minor fugue. I was 13 or 14. And so, Bach has been a big influence on me. But then I started listening to rock and roll and blues, and eventually got into jazz. But all of that stuff was self-taught,
And when did the harmonica start?
Oh, yeah. Well, when I started listening to blues, the drummer in the band, there were a bunch of us who started a band together, and we started out playing like rock and roll stuff, but we kind of evolved musically together. And the drummer got into Chicago blues and played me these records, people like Junior Wells, Butterfield, James Cotton, and Little Walter. And I fell in love with the sound of the harmonica, and he taught himself how to play. And he sounded really good within about a month or so. So I thought, hey, if the drummer can learn how to play harmonica, hey, surely I could do this. So I went to Manny's on 48th Street sometime in 1969, I guess it was, and bought a blues harp for $2.25 and went over to my friend's house on the subway and said, show me how to play the blues.
Mm.
And he said, I can't. I don't understand how I'm bending these notes. I said, what do you mean you can't show me? And that's when, because the harmonica is invisible. As soon as you put it in your mouth, you can't see it. It doesn't. It's the only instrument I know of that's totally invisible to the person playing it.
Yeah,
So
that's actually true. I never thought about that.
yeah, there's no fingerings. You just hold it in your hand. You can do a, wah wah, but aside from that, the hands don't really have much else to do other than hold the instrument. And so I sounded like, really bad. I mean, I couldn't do anything on it.
Yeah,
And then
if you can't figure out how to bend the notes, it's just
I
going up and down.
barely could figure out how to play a single note. I had never played a wind instrument. And I got into Northwestern and came out here to go to school. I was all by myself. I didn't know a soul. And I went to a political rally for the Chicago Seven, who were inciting riots at the 1968 Democratic Convention. And they let them out of prison to raise funds for the defense. And I was very against the Vietnam War. I had marched in a bunch of the big peace marches. And so I was very excited to see these guys. And as soon as I walked out of this rally, I just didn't know what to do with myself. Here I am. I don't know a soul. I didn't know anyone in this hall. There were like 500 of us jammed in there. And so I'm walking along this path, and for some reason, I thought, why don't I try playing the harmonica again? So I picked it up out of my pocket, and all of a sudden, I bent a note. I don't know how, why, and within like a half an hour, I was playing all these simple blues licks because I knew what they sounded like, and I was already a really good piano player. I was writing my own jazz tunes. I could, really play. So I understood what these things were supposed to sound like as soon as I found them. All the stuff that I had heard. All that stuff. And I was jumping out of my skin with excitement because I felt like a different person suddenly.
It got unlocked.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And so I was 18 years old, and that's how I started playing harmonica. Yeah.
Wow. Can you play us like just a little bit of something?
Well, I mean, just a little bluesy something or other, because that's all I wanted to do in the beginning was play blues. Just simple. All that stuff.
So good, dude.
Thank you. I just fell in love with that sound. And then gradually, I started to explore a little bit more. I said, wonder what's up on the high part, because these blues guys that I listened to didn't really play up on the top too much. And I discovered that on the top of the harmonica, you can play the bends on the bottom. All the bent notes happen on the draw, on the inhale, because the harmonica is the only wind instrument that uses the breath in both directions. Each hole has two reeds. One is a blow reed, and the other is a draw reed on the bottom. That's anchored away from you, and you pull in on it, and it vibrates. And you can bend the difference in pitch between the top note and the bottom note on the hole. So if the hole is separated by, you can bend. This is a G harmonica, just the simplest one. That's why I'm playing it for you. So you got a G and an A, but not like on a guitar where you can push the string up to bend a note.
Right.
On harmonica, you pull the pitch of the upper reed down to just above the pitch of the lower reed, so flatter than an A flat. It's subjective.
Yeah.
And the people who designed it had no idea about the bent nose. The people in southern Germany in the 1820s who put
They
this
were,
thing were
they
doing
did
it.
not have the blues.
They had the blues, but they didn't know it.
That's funny.
Das Blau and whatever it's called. So,
So what happened when you were exploring the high parts?
all right. So on the high part of the harmonica, what happens from a musical standpoint, I'll explain how the harp is constructed. So this G harp, if you blow and you get the major arpeggio in the key of G, 3 octaves. It's a big range, like a flute. And the C harmonica is the same range as a flute. It's 3 octaves from middle C. And the G harmonica that this is sort of like a violin without going able to go up high enough, you know. But on the draw, the Germans left out some notes on the bottom to be able to get the 5 chord of G. For German folk music. And then they put all of the notes in the middle octave. 2, 4, 6, 7. So there's too many draw notes in an octave. There's 4 there, as opposed to 1, 3, 5 of the blow. So when you get to the 7th hole, the blow and draw sequence is reversed. The blows are higher. So you can bend the blow notes down on the top. So I discovered that. And it almost sounds like a violin to some people. And so you can play blues licks in the key of the harmonica very easily in G. You know,
So sick.
or, you know, all sorts of other keys. So anyway, I was messing around with all this stuff and trying to play scales in other keys, because being a piano player, you know, this is what you learn. You'd learn stuff, or on a guitar. The instrument's designed to play in all 12 keys.
It's like you're your own private teacher, because you have all this wealth of information and just putting it on this instrument.
Exactly. It was totally self-taught and imitating blues guys that I had heard.
Yeah, but if who would you study with? It's who took it there?
Right, yeah, because I was trying to go beyond what I heard in the simple blues licks after the first month. I mean, at first I was just delighted that I could do this, you know.
Because, well, how come you never got into like the chromatic harmonica? Or
I'll explain that in a second. I actually know how to, and I'll explain what that is. But first I'll explain what I did. So there I am, 18-year-old college freshman sitting in my dorm room. I just remembered my dorm room number. Room 105 at Bob Hall at Northwestern. And I didn't know what I wanted to study. I thought, you know, I'll take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I'll try out for the jazz band. And so I ended up being the piano player for the Northwestern University big band, even though I wasn't a musician, because I could swing, I could play jazz, but I had never seen real jazz charts. I was totally self-educated in jazz too, just from imitating people and writing my own tunes inspired by. It's like you know, you're inspired by ear, and you play things that sound like it. You know, that's
right.
That's musical evolution. I mean, Beethoven sounded like Mozart in the beginning. Ray Charles sounded like Nat King Cole. I mean, everybody starts from emulating their heroes. So I thought, okay, my 18-year-old brain goes, all right, I can bend notes on the top blowing. I can bend notes on the bottom drawing. But there's all these notes that are missing. If I try to play the chromatic scale, there's no B flat. Again, no B flat here. No C sharp. No F. No G sharp. No G sharp up here. No D sharp up here, or E flat. So I realized there's 6 notes that are missing on the instrument. And I thought, what happens if I try to blow bend on the bottom of the harp? I couldn't think of anything else to try. So even though the blow notes are lower on the bottom, I just thought I'd try, you know. So I just had this $2.25 harmonica, which, by the way, the same harmonicas now cost like $40 or something like that.
They appreciate it.
And Northwestern University is so expensive that there's no way that if I were a kid now, my parents would never be able to afford it. So
225 is capped, yeah.
oh my God, Jesus, don't even. Yeah, I think it was around 2,000 a year in tuition when I went there, and now it's like
oh my God,
50,000. I just found it.
It's like 2 houses.
What do you have? Like the Three Stooges used to say, "Who do you have to murder?" So to get that money. So I'm playing a blow band on the bottom of the harp on 6th hole. You bend the E down on the draw to E flat. I'm trying to see what happens if I bend the D down, even though it has no place to go. First is and then I'm experimenting, and this other note pops out, except I didn't get it cleanly back then. And I realized, hey, that's the F. It's not in tune. You have to make it in tune, just like you have to make bends in tune.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Now I can go, before that, if you wanted to go and play the 4-chord lick,
that's not going to work.
And you could only have the flat 7th and the lower octave. So now I got it. There it is. And then I'm thinking, okay, so if I'm playing in that blues position, I'm playing on the key of the draw, Mixolydian mode, you can't get a major 7. You can't play D major scale.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another note that's missing. So I tried bending down the B, and the C sharp popped out. I thought, wow, this is magic. And I thought, maybe every single place on this instrument where there's a missing note, if I do this reverse bending process, I can
just find that.
And it's true. It's like, how come nobody did this before? I'm just an 18-year-old kid. It's impossible. I can't be the first one. Well, it turns out I wasn't the first one. Peeked out some notes in the 1930s, okay? There's one recording of one guy doing that. And there's another recording of some other guy playing one of the notes, right? So people did accidentally stumble on it, but nobody took it seriously. And it was never made a part of anyone's playing style other than like to squeak out a note every once in a while. But me, a pianist who wanted to take this instrument further than just standard blues licks, I had a very strong motivation to figure this out. So then I got the other one, the 4th O. So now the middle octave has all the chromatic tones in it. And,
unbelievable.
And then the 1st hole, same thing. So now I have 2 octave chromatic scale. And then it's up to my brain to say, how am I going to orient myself? And I'm closing my eyes and playing, and trying to play in other keys. And I realize what I'm seeing in my mind is the piano keyboard. So that's how I'm doing this. So
sick. And you play harmonicas in many keys? How does that work? Doesn't it change the entire sequence of notes?
Well, I mean, the harmonicas in different keys, it's all the same instrument, but they just have a different home key. So a B flat harmonica plays the B flat major arpeggio and the F9 on the draw, but
in terms of the transposition and relating it to piano, does that I'm assuming that took a lot of time to kind of study each one of them, no?
No, it's interesting. Now this is a very detailed musical question. But let me get to that in a second, because
sure.
I was just about to finish a train of thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
How I found the remaining notes on the top of the instrument, where the blow and the draw bends are reversed, and I realized that, and I will answer that question about playing on different key harmonicas after I finish this. That to get the missing notes on top, you do the same thing with the draw. So that's a 7 drawing in, and it goes up. And then the 9 drawing in goes up to the D sharp. So not every harmonica can get these things easily, because when they make them at the factory, the reeds are gapped different amounts on different models, and just by individual ones, they vary. It's like guitars. You buy a guitar. Oh, it's a great guitar, but I have to have it set up, right?
Right.
The
Absolutely.
and sometimes the frets. Well, the harmonica is the same thing. You can actually open these up. Geez, I should have had my tools here. And you can change the reed clearances, which I didn't know for the first 15 years that I played. I just thought some of these work better than others. What do I know? I'm just a piano player. I don't know how the piano works. It's a machine, you know. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, now I have the 3-octave chromatic scale. So then playing on different key harps, the way that usually the way this is done is for blues, you play a fifth, a harp that's a I can't even remember how you say it anymore. A harp that's a fifth below the key that you're in. So if you're playing blues now, you get a B flat harp, because that is the second whole draw key, which is the key of the.
So you want to get like a Mixolydian mode that's like relevant,
with all the great blues notes in there that accidentally exist. So most blues harmonica players have to have, you know, a whole bunch of different key harps to play blues in these keys. But the fact is that each one of these instruments, and I'll switch to a C just for the heck of it, because the C is like the white keys of a piano. Each one of these instruments, you can get 7 modal positions. So if you want to play in D minor, you got the Dorian. Even without bending notes in the second octave, first octave.
Right.
You have notes to get them. And if you go up to E to E, you get the Phrygian mode.
Phrygian thing, yeah.
So immediately you can play Middle Eastern music on this. And, you know, I mean, I don't know why no one else did this before me. I have no idea. But I thought, this is a world, there's a world of music inside here. And I want to take this instrument every place it could possibly go. So now that I can play chromatically, I can play theoretically anything in any key. But these modal positions are the start point. So the fourth one, the F to F, is the Lydian mode. But all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
Each of these positions has its characteristic sounds, and the sweet spots of the bends are located in a different place relative to the tonic in each one.
I get it.
So, for example, if you're playing in the Phrygian mode, that bending third down to the flat second is the same bend as playing in Mixolydian. But if you're it's that.
So like the tonality with the physical location on the instrument kind of changes the articulation available, and you just
it's like from Southside blues to Middle Eastern blues.
Right.
If you're in this different modal position, you can get all the sweet spots are in different places of the scale.
Wow.
You know, stuff like that.
Wild.
sounds, people say, that doesn't sound like a harmonica. I go, yes, it does. You just didn't know the harmonica could sound like that. And so anyway, 7 modal positions. And then you asked me another question, which is why about if I knew how to play the chromatic harmonica. So when I first started trying to play jazz on the diatonic, someone gave me a chromatic and said, if you want to play jazz, you should learn one of these guys with the button. This is just a small one that I have. It's 2.5 octaves. And this was invented in 1912 because harmonica players were very frustrated at the fact that they couldn't play all the notes, and they wanted to play other stuff. So the way this thing works, do you know how this works? Have you ever messed with it?
I guess there's like a slide that covers half the holes, right? Or some of the holes. I'm not sure how it works.
There's 2 sets of reeds inside here. That's why it's so big. One of them is in C, and the other one is in D flat.
Mm.
And
so between the 2 keys, you get all the notes.
Yes,
and you cover.
And so the slide will cover one bunch of reeds and open the other. This is the C reeds. These are the D flat reeds. So the scheme is just like the middle octave of the diatonic, repeated over and over again. It's 1, 3, 5, 8. 1, 5, 8 repeated. So there's 2 C's in every octave. So it goes along with DFA. So there's no asymmetry. And then you press it in, and it's.
And can you bend on a chromatic or no?
Well, this is a really interesting question, because the answer is sort of. But that's why you don't hear people really playing blues on a chromatic, because the bending actually is an interaction between the reeds. The way that it works on this instrument, there's the physics involved, and people have written physics papers about this. What's really going on is, like, if you have the C and the D, you notice it gets stronger as you bend down. One reed bends down and the other one bends up in pitch. They each get shorter. It's this weird dance they're doing, and the sound transfers from the draw reed to the blow reed, even though you're drawing. It is the weirdest.
So it's all based on some engineering happy mistake that they didn't even.
Absolutely. So with the chromatic, they had to eliminate the interaction between the reeds because there are 2 sets of reeds and there was too much air leakage. So they put these wind saver valves over the reeds to make it more efficient, thereby eliminating the interaction between the reeds. And also there's separate chambers and stuff like that. So if you try to bend down on a chromatic, all that happens is that the reed starts bending down a little, and then it goes, so it sounds like a car that's running out of gas, you know.
Yeah.
Not the greatest sound.
Oh, yeah.
A guitar with really tight strings or something, really black diamond strings or something.
Yeah.
So
not really satisfying to hear.
But to overcome this, some guys put half valves on them. If you take all the valves off, it's really leaky. But with half valves, you can do more bending. But the idea for the chromatic scale is.
So you keep alternating.
Yes, but not totally, because and you have choices. An F can be.
Sure.
Or it can be the 4th note of the scale or the 3rd note of the D flat.
The 3rd note of the D flat, right.
And the C can be
the 7th or the root, right.
These C's or the 7th note of the D flat scale.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky instrument, and even though it's easier to get notes, you don't need any special embouchure, because to bend the notes that I'm doing, it takes a particular type of embouchure, and also the shape. It's the shape of the inside of your mouth.
That shape.
So.
Right. Right.
So there's all these sounds that don't exist in any language I know of that are the shape your mouth makes when you bend notes.
That's so wild. So, yeah, go ahead.
So I messed around on the chromatic, and I actually learned how to read music on the chromatic. This was too hard for me to read music on because I was concentrating on this whole visualizing the keyboard and stuff, and it was like hard for me to look at notes while I did that. But then, as I got called to do more recording sessions for jingles in Chicago, this is after I had been playing for like 10 or 12 years. I started doing a lot more recording, and then they shoved a piece of music in front of me, and that's when I had to really figure out how to read on different key harmonicas, how to transpose read. So, gee, they want a blues in A with a kind of a country feel. I better play it on a D harp. So I have to read on a D harp now. Let's see. So let me sing the melody. I know what holes of the harmonica have to be played there. And that's how I started doing it. I would sing, sight sing.
So a factor in choosing the key of the harmonica is where these articulations are going to lie and where the draw holes are going to be. And that's brilliant.
To be able to play the standard country licks and standard blues licks and standard chordal vamps, stuff like that, you can only do in Mixolydian mode. So if it's a blues in A, you got to pick up a D harp. If it's a blues in F, you have to pick up a B flat harp, etc. Or if it's in a minor key, you have to pick one of the minor modes like Dorian or Aeolian and pick up that harmonica and read on that. So I trained myself how to transpose read on all these different harmonicas and playing classical gigs eventually. Playing stuff like Bach flute sonatas and partitas and stuff.
Wow.
I did a lot of reading on B flat harmonicas and D harmonicas and C's and G's and so that in my mind, when I'm playing different key harmonicas, what piano do I see? This is the question you asked me, and I promised I'd get back to it. This is a really interesting question because I still see the piano as if it were a G harp, no matter what harmonica I'm playing. Because that was the one I learned on. And that's the one that got kind of burned into my brain. But I can play simultaneously on piano and harmonica on different key harmonicas because I've done this so much now over the years in bands that I play in where it's kind of required because I do this on the records of the Flecktones and Trio Globo especially, that I have trained myself how to separate my brain into like two relative pitch instruments instead of thinking absolute pitch, and I can play, stuff in unison and things in harmony and stuff with different key harmonicas as well.
Wow, it's like two brains.
That's why with two brains, So,
and just to get back at so in terms of influence, like people, I'm assuming you were listening to people like Larry Adler and like Toots Thielemans, but they were chromatic players, and we would like adapt that stuff to the diatonic harmonica.
Not really. I listened to them because they're great.
Yeah.
I was more inspired by John Coltrane and Charlie Parker and Miles Davis, and the same thing with Toots. Toots inspired by Miles and Bird and Coltrane, and
just adapting it.
Doesn't matter what instrument you hear it on.
Sure.
Like, Alan Holdsworth didn't learn how to play guitar like that listening to guitarists.
That's very true.
Coltrane, Eric Dolphy,
Yeah.
And everybody, So it's whatever turns you on,
Yeah.
And so and then people started hiring me, assuming I could play anything on the instrument, which wasn't true. And I'd get to the gig and go, oh my God, how am I going to do this? A lot of learning on the job.
That's for everybody, but you don't admit it. Well, okay. So what did? Yeah. So what you're let's say in your 20s, like you're still in. When was the move from New York to Chicago? Is that like 20s, 30s?
Well, I went to Northwestern when I was 18.
And did you just stay here after?
No. I dropped out after about a year and a half. I really didn't want to be in school anymore. And it was during the Vietnam War, and I got a high enough number in the draft lottery where I didn't think they were going to draft me. So I could lose my student deferment without ending up in Vietnam. So I went back to New York, which is what I really wanted to do and where I really wanted to be. and I had a gig playing in an off-Broadway musical right away. Some friends from here actually got it for me, and it
This is
closed on
playing piano, right?
yeah, it closed on opening night. So
Pretty amazing.
so then I just sort of lived by my wits in New York for the next year or so, and played a lot of music on the street, and just practiced all the time, and started playing other instruments as well, saxophone and flute and mandolin, hand percussion instruments, and I just lived, breathed, and ate and drank and slept music, you know. And but I really, New York was not a livable place for me in the early 70s. It was just, if you didn't have a lot of money, I mean, it was so dangerous. And
Oh,
I wasn't good enough. I was a raw talent. You know, I wasn't somebody who was ready to play with all these great players I wanted to play with. I wasn't ready.
yeah.
And my personal life, I just felt like I didn't have a life. So I moved back to Evanston, not thinking I was going to stay here at all. I thought, well, I'll stay here for a little while because I have some friends, and I ended up staying here from 1972 on. You know.
Wow. So what was the next kind of big gig that happened for you?
Well, you know, I had day jobs. I worked in factories. I did all sorts of stuff and was practicing and started teaching. And then in 1976 is when I started playing music full time.
Hmm.
I was 25 years old. And I started playing with a band called Swing Shift that had the great Jethro Burns in it on mandolin.
Hmm.
And through that, that's how I met Steve Goodman, the great singer-songwriter, who hired me to play with him. And then through Steve, I met John Prine, the amazing singer-songwriter, legendary character, who I recorded 2 CDs with and did a national tour with for a year. Um, at, but that wasn't really what kind of music I really wanted to be playing.
Right. You wanted to shred.
I quit that, and then that's when my Chicago career really started, playing jazz and Latin music and world music. I joined the band Chevrolet in 1979. I started my own jazz quintet called No Bad Vibes
Hmm.
in the same year, and also a group called the Balkan Rhythm Band to play Bulgarian and Macedonian music. And in that group, I mostly played tenor and soprano, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. And so those were the three bands that were like not my bands, but the main bands I was in, and one of them was my band, No Bad Vibes, and
And
that.
how did the association with like the Flecktones and Bela came to be for you?
Oh, that was much later. Uh,
Much later. Okay. So
so
what
then,
happened in between?
yes, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
So I kept doing this, and then I started becoming a regular in the jingle scene in Chicago. Right
Mm.
at that time, 1980, 81, and started playing with a lot more of the jazz people around Chicago, and at places like Andy's, and then got asked to play gigs at the Jazz Showcase. And in the process of this, this is my life in 5 minutes here. I got called to play with Tito Puente one night, to
Mm.
some piano player who couldn't make it. He was stuck in a snowstorm in New York, and that's how I met Paquito de Rivera, who I started touring with in about 83, 84, and recorded 2 tunes on his Explosion album on CBS in 85. And that sort of put me into more of the national focus as somebody who did something unique on the harmonica. But I was this piano player. So I was touring with him on piano.
Mm.
I would stand up and play a harmonica feature and blow people's minds, that kind of thing. And I loved playing with him and with the great musicians in his band. And I
Yeah.
really love Latin jazz, Brazilian, Afro-Cuban, all different cross jazz influences. Uh, but at the same time, I was also recording with a lot of folk people and ended up playing at the Winnipeg Folk Festival several times, where I met Bela. And we
Mm.
sat up all night and jammed one night. And I'm making the story short. We were introduced by a friend of mine who I was playing with, who insisted that we play together. That's what happened. And so Bela later met Vic and Roy uh, in Nashville, where he lives, and he was asked to play a TV show in Louisville called The Lonesome Pine Special. Uh, but only if he put together a band of unusual musicians, not the usual Nashville guys he played with, that the producers thought, yeah, these guys are great, but I want to hear you do something really unusual. And Bela thought, unusual, Howard Levy, and then good. And so we were put together to play a TV show. And after we played and people went nuts, we looked at each other and went, I think this is a band. You want to try this again? And that's how it started. And
wow.
We recorded the first CD. Bela spent his own money, and then he got a contract. He sold it to Warner Brothers Nashville, and multi-record deal. And I stayed and did that for 4 years through the end of 1992.
How much road was there in that band?
A lot. We would do 120, 130 shows a year, and then plus the recording an album each year and rehearsing. And I never wanted to move to Nashville, so I was gone about 180 days a year.
How'd you like that?
It was too much for me, really. I mean, I liked it in terms of it was thrilling, and to be in an instrumental band that was achieving so much notoriety, and it was very unusual. We were, on VH1. We had a great video. Actually, I hate music videos, but they made it really good. Of the Sinister Minister. It was really good. And they were showing that like in heavy rotation on VH1, like 4 or 5 times a day. And we were on the Tonight Show and Arsenio Hall and all these other shows, and getting a lot of really prominent notice.
Making history.
And thanks to the fact that I was still getting called for jingles in Chicago, I could afford to do this because we made no money the first year. I mean, we were paying for everything, We paid every motel room. We paid for our bus,
Sure.
Back on the money that I made the first year, and I believe it was something like $19,000 for 120 shows.
Wow.
Because we had to, we were making low money. We were paying for everything, right?
It's so funny because people listening to those records now will not put that together in their mind.
No, we started making money after about 3 years, and that's when I left because I'm against money. No, I just at that point the problem was they wanted to tour more and more and more, and I'm going, yeah, this is great, but I have a lot of other musical interests, and I can't do any of them. I mean, 180 days a year away from, and at the time I was married and had 2 little kids. None of the other guys had children. The stresses on me were really immense, and it was starting to sound more and more similar to me too. It was, the freshness of it was wearing off for me, and I had other desires, especially playing more acoustically. Everything was electric. And I said, hey, if you want to do 60 or 70 gigs a year, I'll do this the rest of my life. It's amazing, but I can't play 150 shows a year and be the one everyone looks at like, oh yeah, we'd love to do this. Let's see if Howard wants to do it. It felt wrong in many ways to me. And I needed a break from it.
Yeah.
But the only way to take a break from it was to quit.
Yeah.
I did. And I'm really glad I quit. And I went on and did all sorts of other stuff that I never could have done if I had stayed. But then also the reunion has been wonderful too.
Yeah. How's that been like? Just getting back on stage with that?
Well, I did about 1,000 other things between.
Of course.
And 2010.
Of course.
Including Trio Globo and composing Harmonica Concerto and playing with Kenny Long, all this other stuff, and much more actually. Touring with Rabin.
So right when you got off the road with the Flecktones, like you came back to Chicago, and what was the first band that you kind of got into right after then?
Well, the beginnings of Trio Globo. With Glenn Velez on percussion and Eugene Friesen.
He's unbelievable. Yeah. Those are great records, dude. Yeah.
That started happening right away, as did Rabi Abu Khalil, Lebanese oud player who I started touring with in, I think, September of 1993. And Loggins, Outside from the Redwood CD, We recorded that in, I believe, June of '93. So like about 4 or 5 months went by without much happening, and then these three things and more started happening right away. And I was in Europe a lot, which I really loved. And
The
doing
audiences there? Like, what about it? Just the places, or was it...
the experimental nature of the music, being in Europe, touring with people from different countries and different cultures, and all of this mixing and mingling of things, playing for these German radio shows that were Südwestfunk in Baden-Baden did all these experimental things of putting musicians together from all these different places. And I had some great experiences, German radio and TV. I did a lot of things I really loved.
And this is like what years? Like the mid to late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, I'd say 93 to 98 or 99 maybe. And meanwhile, I was recording on lots of people's records, like, one or two here and there. And I did some movie soundtrack recordings in New York and LA, which were really fun. And actually, they paid well and they were great experiences. And
I could totally see like anybody who needs like, you're the only guy to call.
Well, if I lived in New York or LA, I would have gotten a lot more calls like that, because there are very good musicians playing harmonica in New York and in LA, and they're really great in the studio. But nobody really sounds like me. And if you want me, you pretty much have to call me.
Sure.
People who used me were specifically saying, he lives in Chicago, but we really want him, and we'll fly him in. And one of my favorite experiences doing that, maybe it was a little later, was I got to play on a Donald Fagen album. It's called Morph the Cat, and I played on 2 songs on that. Ended up playing live with Donald's band once and with Steely Dan twice, which was just fantastic.
Yeah.
I really loved doing that, and I recorded with Dolly Parton for a movie soundtrack, which was, I'm actually writing my memoirs, because one of the things about me is my combination of instruments and musical styles that I play. I've had experiences probably in more different styles of music than most musicians get to have.
Oh, it's so eclectic.
And not as a quote sideman, as a sideman, but as a soloist and somebody who's featured in these settings. And so
the nature of the instrument also makes you they get you to stand there and tell a little story.
That and then the piano too.
Yeah.
My main instrument. So and a lot of writing and arranging and stuff that I've done. So it's a very very rich life, and actually recently I started singing, and
really?
I did, where I sang, because I've been writing songs for 40 years with words, but I'm not a singer per se, but as long as I remember that, I can sing my own songs okay. As long as I take trying to sing in tune seriously and not thinking I'm a singer, then I can do it. And so this has been a really great joy for me, encouraged by my wife. I got remarried recently, and
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Designed my CD packages and covers, and encouraging me to finish all of these loose ends that I have sitting around. We started a series called From the Vaults. I have my own record label I started in 2004. It's called Balkan Samba Records, which the name was a joke. It was the name of my publishing company on BMI, back when you used to do things by mail. And I have these hip names picked out, which of course had all been taken. You couldn't do searches online for anything back then.
Right.
They sent a letter back, "Congratulations, Balkan Samba Music." I went, "Oh, jeez." And plus the initials, BS Music, right?
That's hilarious. I didn't think about that.
But I thought, hey, I love Bulgarian music and Brazilian music. Hey, Balkan Samba.
Yeah. So where can people find some of your singing songs, like the songs you write?
There's only one on a recording, a really obscure recording, but I'm going to put out a CD of my songs because I just put out a book, my memoirs. No, not my memoirs. That's something I'm working on, but there's some short stories. It's called Songs, Poems, and Stories. Can I run to the other room and get it and hold it
Sure,
up?
sure, of course.
It's a quick
Love
run.
that.
And
Yeah.
he's passing the first turn. Good. Keep him entertained while I'm gone.
That's what I do.
So here's my.
Oh, dude. Everybody, you guys should get it.
Yeah, we've sold quite a few of them actually internationally. There's been a lot of orders from different countries because I have
So this is like road stories too, and like
road stories, poems that I've written because I've written poems since I was a kid, and my song lyrics, and also some of my drawings because I went through a period in my life where I started to draw, and I was interested in perspective and in life, and also it was sort of a form of therapy for me. I was trying to figure out my life, and I would sit and stare at things and try to draw them. I had, again, no lessons or anything like this, but I started concentrating really, really hard on staring at stuff and figuring out how to render perspective. And because I'm not an artist at all,
yeah.
I like stare at something and the pencil, I try to have it moving in the way that I'm perceiving. So stuff came out looking pretty good.
Yeah.
That was the first time I drew a hand.
Uh-huh.
I never studied it. I just
Yeah.
looked at the hand, holding the cap of the pen, sitting in my seat in on a flight to Europe with the German telephone card there. See, that's what
That's
that is.
awesome.
And
Yeah,
it
man.
was a very, very intense time for me. And so this book is sort of a mixture of drawings and poems and song lyrics. And yeah.
Yeah, it's like it seems like you have like you're into so many things. Like, and it comes across in your music too. It's like so many like internal worlds meeting. You know what I mean? And like each that's really like the thing. It's really like there's a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah, it's something that has worked for me and against me in my life because I don't like being pigeonholed or pinned down. I like
Right.
to feel free. And so if I get involved in something that makes me do the same thing over and over and over again,
The stifling feeling starts
yeah.
coming.
And so I like a diverse life where I'm doing, some of this, some of that, some of this, teaching. Matter of fact, I have an online harmonica school.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
what's it called?
Well, the company is called Artist Works. Artist is singular and works is plural, and it's one
Hmm.
word. Just Howard Levy Harmonica School. It's a fantastic company. They have great musicians teaching their instruments. I mean, they have about 6 guitar teachers, including Paul Gilbert and God, what's his name? Oh, Martin.
Taylor?
Martin Taylor, yes.
Yep.
And a great classical guitarist, Jason Vieux,
Hmm.
and Andreas Oberg, and
Yeah.
like everyone, every guitarist is great and different and interesting. And George Whitty is the jazz piano teacher, and John Patitucci is the upright bass instructor.
You guys got quite the school going.
Electric bass. Peter Erskine is the drum teacher. I mean, this is like,
Yeah, it's
they're in
heavy.
a bunch. And a whole bunch of great bluegrass musicians, Daryl Anger and Mike Marshall. And I mean,
Wow.
everybody is great. And the company is headquartered in Napa, California. And it's owned by this wonderful couple who have a fascinating background in corporate America and who are devoted to spreading music education throughout the world.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, they could be making a lot more money just investing their money, but they started this company out of a sense of, it's kind of a mission.
Unbelievable.
And so I'm the harmonica teacher. It's me instead of somebody who just does blues 101, It's
Right.
I teach every style that I play in, and I have hundreds of students from all over the world, some of whom are amazing sounding. And, because I started on harmonica, I revolutionized the way the instrument's played. And especially in other countries where they weren't so rooted in blues and folk music, people in other countries went, oh, this is really cool. I want to do this,
Yeah.
All over Europe, South America, Asia, there are all these players, a lot of young ones, who are sort of sound like me, It's just scary.
That's unbelievable. Well, Howard, will you play us like a tune? Play us out of this thing?
Oh, sure.
We absolutely love that.
How about something on piano and harmonica simultaneously?
That would be amazing.
I'll just make up something.
Please, please. Unbelievable, man. Dude, thank you so much for your time, and everybody listening, just flock for your book, your albums, like the the legacy you leave behind you. Like, you're not dead, but like, that you already have behind you is so massive. Like,
I'm still alive, very much alive.
Still putting out stuff, but I mean, it's like you already done so much, so we appreciate you.
I have more and more stuff that's coming down the pike, man. Just look out for it on Facebook and on my website, and I'm still doing a lot of live performing, and they're in Chicago and all over the world. So and Flecktones have another summer tour.
Unbelievable.
We started Red Rocks. We had the big reunion in 2011, 2012, and I won a second Grammy for writing a tune in 11. It's called Life. We have about 20 dates this summer and about another 15 in the fall. And so keep track of me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
thank you for being so generous with everything. Like, just like open. So we really appreciate you, Howard.
Okay,
We'll
man.
see you soon.
Any.
Bye.
Bye.